We are once again glad to have Marty Schmidt with us. I hope you all know how much of a challenge it is to be asked to play something without any preparation. And of course, during our hymn sing, the only thing she said was, "They will be from the hymnal, won't they?" Thanks for being with us, Marty, and for being a good sport. Our gospel reading this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 24. We continue where we left off last week, where Jesus taught his disciples to pray. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do, for I have no place to store my crop?" Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build bigger barns, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.' He said to his disciples, 'Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouses nor barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more value are you than the birds? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to the span of your life? If then you are not able to do so small a thing as that, why do you worry about all the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God chooses to clothe the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strives for all these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I had the good fortune to sing in the Bethel College choir for 5 years, 4 as a student and 1 more after graduating. I stayed for the 5th year so I could go to Europe. While I was there, they didn't have a European tour. So I hung around, as did a number of other students. And it may sound like bragging, and perhaps it is, but Minnesota has a reputation for having some of the finest collegiate choirs in the country. St. Olaf Choir, the Concordia Choir, the Augsburg Choir, the Bethel Choir. And I could go on, for there are more. Robert Berglund was the conductor of the Bethel Choir, and everything I know about making music, I owe to that man. Every concert, every performance by the Bethel Choir under the direction of Dr. Berglund ended with his arrangement of Edward Bickersteth's hymn, Peace, Perfect Peace. After singing it for 5 years, it was impossible to sing it and keep a dry eye. Needless to say, 40 years later, I still know the words and can hear the entire piece in my mind's ear. Peace, perfect peace, in this dark world of sin. The love of Jesus whispers peace within. As I have said before, if you want someone to remember something, sing it to them. But if you want them to know it at a deep and personal and profound way, teach them to sing it themselves. They may not experience the truth of the music at the time, but by burying it deeply in a person's memory, in their subconscious, I can guarantee that almost 100% of them will eventually experience the profound and deep meaning buried in the text. Peace, perfect peace, by thronging duties pressed, to do the will of Jesus, this is best. Jesus was busy. The crowd was growing by the minute. Pushing and shoving had broken out. People were just shouting out comments like modern-day hecklers. He casts out demons by Beelzebul, the ruler of the demons. And blessed is the womb that bore you and your breasts that nursed you. And teacher, when you say these kinds of things, you insult us. The scribes and the Pharisees had begun to be very hostile toward him and to cross-examine him about the things he was saying. They were lying in wait, hoping to catch him in something so that they might put him to death. And then someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." And it almost sounds like Jesus went off on him. Who made me judge and executioner? Seems a bit harsh, but it may well be that he was getting a little frustrated by the interruptions. So he launches into one of his hardest of parables. We know this story, don't we? We know it because it strikes a little too close to home. Who among us has not torn down some figurative barn to build a bigger one? Who among us has not looked at our lives, our accomplishments, our successes, and felt some pride and satisfaction? Who among us hasn't looked at our families, our children, our sons, our daughters, our grandchildren, and not felt welling up in us a sense of pride and contentment? And the truth is, none of that is wrong. None of that is a problem for Jesus. The problem is a matter of the heart. The questioner's heart was in the wrong place. He wasn't interested in his just share. He was only interested in justice for himself. He wasn't interested in generosity except as the settlement would be generous for him. And Jesus says, "You fool." His heart was in the wrong place, and therefore his life was empty. And his life would still be empty when he received his inheritance. Like the man in the parable, the questioner was perhaps wealthy already. But instead of having a desire to be rich toward God, he just desired to be rich. Peace, perfect peace, with sorrows surging round, on Jesus' bosom naught but calm is found. But of course, Jesus wasn't done yet. You see, too often we think this story is about money, that it's wrong to have money. But what Jesus is really saying is that it's foolish to worry about money. That to live well and to live wise, one shouldn't worry about being rich oneself, but one should be rich toward God. If we have been blessed to be successful and have accumulated enough to live well, then be rich. Be generous toward God. Care for the things God cares about. Care for the people God cares about. Care for your church. Care for the earth. Care for those who are not as fortunate in their lives, who need help to get by, who don't have bread for today. Be rich toward God. Use your gifts and talents to further the work of the church. Serve on a committee. Give leadership to your class. Volunteer to prepare a meal. See to it that your young people and children are here on Wednesday nights for their activities. Offer your creativity as the church seeks to develop new ways of sharing First Christian story of the good news of God in Jesus Christ with this community. Peace, perfect peace, our future all unknown. Jesus we know, and he is on the throne. There is so much in this world that is out of control. There is so much that we can't understand, can't wrap our arms around. It seems like every time our phone chirps, there is a notice about another shooting, more reprehensible loss of life. Where did all the anger come from? Where did all the hatred come from? What is the undercurrent that is feeding the violence in our country and in this world today? There seems to be so much fear that it would be easy to curl up in our own cocoon and let the world pass by without even trying to make a difference. And for a wide swath of Christianity, that is exactly what they do. Believing what Jesus says here seems to free them from being engaged in the world today. They're simply holding out until that day when God will come swooping in and make everything all right. Since birds don't worry about their plumage, why should we worry either? But I don't believe for 1 second that Jesus is interested in a faith that is founded on pie in the sky, in the sweet by and by living. Jesus' desire for us is engagement. He doesn't advocate for peace by standing on the sidelines. He offers peace in the midst of the fray. In the struggle, when we get onto the game, is where we find and make peace. As I have said, this is a generous church. By the world's standards, this is a rich church. You do understand that to be truly happy, to have joy, to have meaning in life, one must be rich toward God. You do understand that to be truly happy and have joy and meaning in your life, that you must share the blessings that you have received. And I am so very proud of the way that you do that. But being generous toward God, being rich toward God, is not just about sharing our wealth, our finances. In fact, I don't believe it is even primarily about sharing our wealth, our finances. It's about sharing our story of faith. It's about sharing what our relationship with God through Jesus Christ means in our life. That's the richness of God. And being rich towards God is returning that richness back to God and in sharing it with one another. In sharing the role that First Christian Church makes in your life can make a difference in someone else's life. About why do you get up on Sunday? And instead of spending the morning at Starbucks or Kentucky Coffee, or sitting out on your deck or your front porch reading the paper, instead you come downtown. Nobody comes downtown. But you come downtown for fellowship and for worship. You come down here to First Christian Church because perhaps this is the only place where you find peace. The peace of the people you love in your pew and across the aisle. The peace of prayer. The peace of hearing God's story of love in word and in song. The peace of gathering at Christ's table where for a few minutes you can shut the door on the world's trouble and prepare yourself to re-engage in the hard work of bringing peace where you work and play, where you live. This place is where you have learned to be rich toward God. This place is where you have learned generosity. This is where you have found peace. No, not perfect peace. For we too do look for the day of perfect peace. But we don't wait for it here. We work for it. Peace, perfect peace, earth's struggles soon shall cease, and Jesus calls us to heaven's